Okay, hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. Roaring souls at the end of time. I wanted to speak about, actually, even though I've titled this episode Roaring Souls at the End of Time, the first title that came to me for this episode, some episodes, some talks I give have multiple names. But the first name I wanted to give for this talk was the intent behind your effort suggests your soul size. Then I thought about the idea of the soul and the concept of size and how we size up things to have meaning, but the soul is something that you can't really size. It's the one sizing, it's the active mover in some sense. And so in the subtitle, if you look underneath the quote I've shared, it says, how can the soul have size? So I'm pretty much in this episode, even though the title is Roaring Souls at the End of Time, that's an imagery I will get to at the end, but the main idea is the intent behind your effort suggests your soul size. Now, this is an interesting idea, the idea of the soul. This was one of those strings I had to pull in my youth to see where it led. Human beings are born in different parts of this planet, and the land on this planet has a history. That means before what happened to people, it was what happened to the land, what happened to the world where creatures emerged. Now, what's interesting is that we are considering ourselves as human beings and civilized human beings that can speak, that can communicate, and the word human being has been only added because we didn't feel just like an animal. There was something different. Now, I personally have developed a model for evolution, and it is different than, I would say, the typical ideas you will find on evolution, but my approach is different. So it's not that I am saying there is no evolution, but I am seeing a different angle to evolution. First, I am considering, I've created acronyms for this: UW, US, CS, CW. These are four phases I feel our species and we are evolutionarily set for. And this is important for me to explain, because in the relationship between an unconscious world becoming conscious, there is the process of an unconscious self becoming a conscious self. Now, when I say the intent of effort, really what the human being is, you wake up and it's pretty binary. That means regardless of this, if you took away the storytelling, all the fragmented landscapes upon the immediate outer realm landscape, pretty much it would be world transformation through self-transformation. The world transformed, it led to a self. The self transformed, it led to a conscious self. That conscious self transformed, it's going to become the conscious world. So phase one, and we're currently in phase 3 of this model of evolution I'm saying. Phase 1, there was nobody here. It was just matter in space. So matter in space is not intelligent. It doesn't matter if there is a planet Earth, there is other celestial objects. There's no one to be aware of these objects at this point in the phase of the unconscious world. Now we go to the unconscious self. This is what I personally consider the objective evolution. I term it the objective evolution, different than Darwinian evolution. For the interest for me in this is how it fits into Darwinian evolution, but I'm saying that the uniqueness for me is the mystery of design of creaturehood. We are really taking for granted how we look like something at all in empty space. You see, there's a uniqueness in design. You know, it's not enough to just say, okay, there's invisible hands moving things, invisible forces we can't comprehend, because what we see back in the day was superstition becomes reality. So what is seen as superstition may have a real explanation in the future, right? All these human beings on the planet who feel they're communicating with something else when they close their eyes, that could totally be something that it may be like, oh man, that's superstition, what is this? But in the future it becomes real. What we thought was, for example, black magic back in the day, people realized it was disease. It was just, it had to do also with the health, you know. So not everything is per se an abstract explanation in an arbitrary space where whoever gets to it first becomes the declaration. But it's just that it's very crucial, the point where we stopped becoming an object to ourselves, and that is the next phase. So first phase, the unconscious world. Second phase, the objective evolution, the unconscious self, a body emerged, moving. And then the third phase, which where we are currently now, this is the subjective evolution. So remember, I called phase 2 the objective evolution. This one I'm calling the subjective evolution. Why? This is what they don't teach in schools, and in some sense they can't, because we are defining matter to be in the room, then the immaterial, but the mind is actually a non-physical activity, not a non-contentless activity, but a non-physical activity. That means whoever's listening to me, yes, your physical body exists, your ears exist, your brain exists, but the idea of you that is listening, taking in, connecting the dots with what I hear, that is different. You know, this is why in modern times, there's, I'll continue with this model I'm saying, but just I gotta say this. In these modern times, we have made the voice of an object louder than the voice of a subject. So truth is based on the shape, not based on how the shape moves or what causes the shape to move, right? So based on shapes, we will be contained, we will be limited. That means it's as if the moment you see the shape of the house, the inner dimensions of the house are limited. The moment you choose the size, imagine being an architect. So there was just a world, then there was an unconscious self in the world. Imagine a body just moving around on the planet without direction or any control, just some movement, a movement of a body, limbs moving on Earth, but no self-awareness to that complexity. Then we have the subjective evolution. This is where something made this creature be aware that it's a creature. That's the thing. Now, there's different explanations. One explanation could be this creature saw its hands, its body, and then it had an ownership of its first-person view from its eyes. Another view is that it saw other human beings, and it was like, okay, it's not just me here. If others look individual, then I probably look individual. Another view is it saw its shadow. Another possibility is that it saw its reflection in something. And this made the creature become aware. Another possibility is weather and hostility in the environment. Imagine like the earliest creature, humanoid creatures, not being conscious they're individuals, and an animal biting them, and them having no differentiation. They don't even know how to process pain. Right now we like touch a fire and we're like, oh my God, you know, don't play with fire. You know? We now can comprehend our pain. We can pinpoint our pain in subjective narrative. Back in the day, this was not there, so it was bulldozering as just a physical movement in incomprehensible outcome. The soul hadn't roared. The soul roared when it became conscious. An object can be mobile subjectively. Now, there's something to the title. At the end of time is a suggestion of not necessarily an apocalypse, not necessarily an end of the space-time continuum. It means a state where space and time, it's not that they don't exist, they don't continue on for the experiencer in the same way. So, Jacques Lacan also, this French psychologist, he explained this similar thing as just self-awareness, but he explained it on a cultural level, that when a child is born, like parents can check this out. If your child at a very young age can notice itself in the mirror, that is a smart child. Do you know? Because in this life, intelligence is not accumulation of language that just groups of people, show thumbs up to. It's about actually the inner geometric landscape behind the meaning of the world expanding, which means the child looking in the mirror and being like, no way, that's me right there, and that Jacques Lacan called that the mirror effect, the self-awareness. So I'm calling this through an evolutionary view of the timeline. That means if people ask Mr. Within, do you believe in evolution? I believe in two types. And then all the evolutionary biologists are like, excuse me? Now, we are subjects. That means I like Darwin, and I'm okay with all this Darwining going on. But an object has become a subject, and all human knowledge has failed. The moment we have realized language has just been the interlinking of sound and image in front of your eyes with image behind your eyes. Sound has been connecting. Sound has been it's remarkable just how this creature figured out that it can make noises and then ascribe imagery, inner imagery to it. I am telling you, we have a lot of confusion and war on our planet because we're actually in a multidimensional universe, but we are treating it as a universe, as one verse, as one containment. Please tell me this isn't on mute. Okay. Whew. Okay, so these were the three phases of evolution. Then we go to the conscious world. Now I'm gonna pause here. Too many episodes I've talked about it, how the conscious world is gonna look like, and that takes us to a future where we have surpassed individual identification. Right now we're identifying with like I don't know, an object in space, okay? But when this object in space is treating itself like a noun, implements its intelligence, activates its intelligence, it becomes a verb. By the nature of being a verb, the mind is more real than how the body is being a noun. So the verb becomes the mover of the attention. So it's like we have this impression our body is where life is, and our attention comes from that. We don't realize that there is a sort of multidimensional contextual similarity as the color spectrum, as like the Pink Floyd album cover, where one light beam, like the white light beam, goes into a prism, and we simultaneously see that beam as the color spectrum, right? So right now I am speaking to you on the side of the prism where the color spectrum is distinct. So what that means is I am speaking to you on the multidimensional side of a universal coin of intelligent activity. This intelligent activity, the moment it goes beyond conditional means, you require to rely on an unconditional trust. For a lot of people who go towards even yoga and mysticism, they are trying to find this unconditional trust, not realizing that if you don't trust how an object is meaningless and you can't trust that space, you cannot have the potential of the meaning of an object arising or a subjective experience. Because for me, this is the hilarious thing. It is true. Right now there's a cup of water. I just lift it up. I put it down on the table. It is true. But before I have touched the cup of water, what is the difference between me seeing a cup of water on the table in front of my eyes and me closing my eyes and seeing that cup of water on a different table? You know, so the major there is, if you were really observant in your inner realms, that means if you really closed your eyes and stared at how your imagination or your mind, where your memory and visualization and thought live, if you really paid attention to that, you would see it's a distance. You have a distance from your imagination. The unknown viewer has a distance from the outer realm content and the inner realm content. And without space, there would be no consciousness, in the same way where if there was no space between words in a book, it would be one giant word. Like, look at this author, he wrote a giant word, you know? His whole book was one word, but it took, like, I don't know, 300 pages for the one word to be spelled, you know? So it's the space that gives meaning to the sentence, and it's kind of like noticing dimensions of your being that are in dualistic jurisdiction, in singular jurisdiction, in void jurisdiction, and in infinite jurisdiction. Those things we see in the outer realms that are miracles, they are in the infinite jurisdiction. Usually the outer realms, it's heading to duality. What does that mean? That means, think of it this way, that in front of your eyes, that which is dual is becoming infinite. Behind your eyes, that which is singular is becoming void. It's kind of this idea that the person's access beyond it's like a person is seeing always one step ahead of their karma, or they wouldn't know they have karma. That one space is at least necessary. So if the person, think of it this way, imagine you had like these wooden poles on your feet, like back in the day, like, I don't know, in some festivals, carnival kind of imagery, there was like people walking on like wooden poles or something. So imagine you're walking on a wooden pole. So wherever you stand, you are that distance higher than everyone, if with those wooden poles underneath your feet, right? So I am saying, when it comes to also karmic interpretation as an object or as a subject, really one will realize, as an object you can comprehend the karma of the observable universe, the cause and effect of the observable universe. But as a subject, you cannot pinpoint movement. Why? Because an object is in a location. A subject is not in a location. A subject is non-local. We say it's the brain, but experientially we don't know the brain until we open the skull, you know? You know, because if everything was based on evidence of an empirical nature, we would only know matter. That means if there was a probability that something was beyond, it's like, how do we know it? You know what it is? It's like that sentence that says, I need to see it to believe it, but you don't see waves. I don't see radio waves right now. Does that mean I shouldn't believe in radio waves? You know? I don't see people in another part of the world living in a certain way. Does that mean I shouldn't believe there are people in another part of the world living that way? You know? And so if everything was just based on testing what we see, okay, then it's like magicians would be like, look at this species. It has fooled itself in sensory acceptance of truth. So every magic show is going to be truth. Right? And this is the cool thing, that I am saying we have evolved beyond how our language contains us. That is the roar of the soul at the end of time. Because time is a narrative. It's like some people are like, what time is it? They ask that question. Some people are like, what is time? You know? I wish I could go back in time and all the school days I have been late to class be like, and the teachers been like, you're late. You know, I could have totally taken a philosophical angle, you know. It's like, okay, how do you define time? In my definition of time, I'm not late. Time, from Da Vinci's view, for example, he had this view where he said time waits for those who who want to use it. You know, that means if time is an arbitrary notion, it's literally like we can say we're not allowed to believe in time, guys. Time is woo-woo. I guess through the atheistic mentality. There is so many ideas that are not physical related, which we are acting in our society as if they are real, right? We don't realize it. And what's even hilarious is like the scientific community is like, oh my God, there's so many science fiction movies coming out. Why aren't people being interested in science? Let me tell you why. Because nobody wants to learn anything where their imagination can't be wild in. This is the truth of education. Unless you tap into that inner wilderness of wanting to know, to expand your inner landscape for the sake, and I don't want to say it's a selfish reason, but when it comes to when you're in an illusion, sometimes you got to be selfish, right? You don't have to selfish your whole life, but it's like, look at these selfish fishermen selling fish. Not caring how the fish feel, you know. What I'm trying to say is that the best way to define what we are is not as a human shape only. I'm not saying we forget that. I'm saying as an intelligent activity of a universal sector. We are right now in the Milky Way galaxy. I don't know why we call it Milky Way, but I don't know. Some astrophysicists like it too much, you know. No, it has. I think it comes from Latin. Let me check this out. Let me see. Milky Way etymology. Okay, Greek and Roman. The Greek name for Milky Way is something I can't pronounce. Galaxias. It's derived from the Greek word for milk, gala. And Zias is like axis, right? So it's like, one legend explains how the Milky Way was created by Heracles when he was a baby. Oh my God, a god made our, Milky Way galaxy when it was a baby. A baby god made our galaxy, guys, in Greek mythology. Who knew? Oh my God, there's so many traditions. Armenian, Khoisan, Cherokee, Eastern Asian, Egyptian, Finno-Ugric, Mesopotamian, Greek and Roman, Hindu, Irish, Hungarian, Maori, Australian, Aboriginal. All these cultures have had mythological explanations of how the Milky Way galaxy came. Just for the sake of the audience, I'm going to read this. Ancient Armenian mythology called the Milky Way the Straw Thief's Way. According to legend, the god Vahagn stole some straw from the Assyrian king Barsham and brought it to Armenia during a cold winter. When he fled across the heavens, he spilled some of the straw along the way. Oh my God. Armenian mythology is ridiculous. So a god was running away across the heavens and he spilled some of the straw along the way. That means it's like we're like, instead of spilled milk, we're spilled Milky Way galaxy. So don't cry over spilled milk, don't cry over spilled Milky Way galaxy. In the Khoisan people of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa say that long ago there were no stars and the night was pitch black. A girl who was lonely and wanted to visit other people threw the embers from a fire into the sky and created the Milky Way. Wow. So in southern Africa, you know, it was a response to loneliness. In the Armenian mythology, the galaxy came about because of running away from a mistake. Do you know? So you see, it was the mythology was a response to running away. The Khoisan tradition was a response to loneliness. A Cherokee folklore tells of a dog who stole some cornmeal and was chased away. He ran away to the north, spilling the cornmeal along the way. The Milky Way, and thus called, I can't pronounce this, Gili Ulisvasdanvi, where the dog ran. Where the dog ran. So in the Cherokee tradition, it's like it's a trail, something left behind. See, in all these, there's something in common, right? There were bits of something thrown, bits of things set into motion. In Eastern Asia, peoples in Eastern Asia believed that the hazy band of stars was the silvery river of heaven. In one story, the stars Altair, Altair, and Vega were said to be two lovers who were allowed to meet once a year on the 7th day of the 7th month, when a flock of magpies and crows formed a bridge over the galactic river. That day is celebrated as Ki-Ti, the 7th night. And here there's it writes in brackets like a term for it in Chinese, Korean, Chilasiok in Korean, and in Japanese, Tanabata, and in the Chinese, I can't read that alphabet. In Egyptian mythology, the Milky Way was considered a pool of cow's milk. The Milky Way was defiled as a fertility cow goddess by the name of Bat, later on syncretized with the sky goddess Hathor. What does that mean, syncretized? Religious syncretism is the blending of two or more religious belief systems into a new system. Yeah, because religion, even though it's ideology on a piece of paper, but it's the brain of the human being that animates. It's like every book I have read, it's just been ink on a page. It's the human brain that adds the human dimension, or the human mind that adds the humanity to the moment, right? A person can hold a volleyball and be like, yeah, this is a volleyball. If a person is on an island long enough without any communication, that volleyball becomes a human being. So what does that mean? That means we are being human as a response to the gigantic emptiness and loneliness of the realm. So the story of the world, it's like a Sufi hadith, where in the Sufi hadith, and of course in the Muslim tradition this may not be authenticated to all let's say Islamic scholars, but the idea of the Sufi tradition, this hadith, the concept was God was saying something, and God was saying, I was unknown and I wanted to be known, so I created the universe and I created man, as if this whole effort of universal shapehood and creaturehood and storyhood is because truth was lonely. God was alone. Maybe when a person goes towards solitude, that's when they notice that God stayed. Why? Because it's something that is not dependent on others. That means if another human being's voice has to become, like, here's the thing, unless the species learns, 8 billion human beings learn to pilot their attention as if liberty is your birthright, your existential birthright, as if we're 8 billion tourists Okay, and the governments and civilization is a giant tourist agency, and civilization's like, yeah, in the future, I mean, it's too far, it becomes abstract, so best thing, the purpose of life is to serve people now, advance civilization in the now. That means instead of past going to present going to future, it's like there was from the beginning a present, and extraction, giant extraction exhibitions and projects are happening in regards to extracting geometry from the past, extracting geometry from potential futures, and then reanimating, redesigning, re-engineering the current now. That means first our eyes need to be free. Then our eyes, the moment they become free, they free the world. Then the eyes of the world becomes free, and then the world starts building itself through free eyes. That's it. What else is going to happen? Until in the future, there's the prophecy, eyes are going to close. Like all prophecies on this planet is going to be like, it's going to end, or it's going to begin. I prophesize it's going to end. I prophesize it's going to begin, and all of it has been that. It's either been the ending of a collective simulation, or the beginning of a collective simulation, or the beginning of an individual simulation, or the ending of a collective individual simulation. This world knowledge is not the hard part. The hard part is not knowing. To know thyself is actually easy. Right? To know thyself in the gigantic unknownness of the realm. In the Finno-Ugric, among the Finns, Estonians, and related peoples, the Milky Way was and is called the pathway of the birds. The Finns observed that migratory birds used the galaxy as a guideline to travel south, where they believed Lintukoto bird home was. In Estonian folklore, it is believed that the birds are led by a white bird and the head of a maiden who chases birds of prey away. The maiden, the goddess Lindu, was the queen of the birds and the daughter of Ukko, the king of the sky. After refusing the suits of the sun and moon for being too predictable in their routes, and the pole star for being fixed, she fell in love with the light of north for its beauty. They became engaged, but the constant light of north left her soon afterward. The tears of the broken-hearted Lindu fell on her wedding veil, which became the Milky Way when her father brought her to heaven so she could reign by his side and guide the migrating birds who followed the trail of stars in her veil. Only later did scientists indeed confirm this observation. The migratory birds used the Milky Way as a guide to travel to warmer southern lands during the winter. Yeah, later on scientists confirmed ancient mythology. It's like, thanks, scientists. Guys, what I'm reading, I mean, entertain what I'm saying, of course. The value of speech is not just to how it linearly makes sense, it's also to the geometry of the concepts shared. Mesopotamian. In the Babylonian epic, how long is this? No, it's not that long. Okay. In the Babylonian epic poem Enuma Elish, the Milky Way is created from the severed tail of the primeval saltwater dragoness Tiamat, set in the sky by Marduk, the Babylonian national god, after slaying her. This story was once thought to have been based on an older Sumerian version in which Tiamat is instead slain by Enlil of Nippur, but is now though to be purely an invention of Babylonian propagandists with the intention to show Marduk as a superior to the Sumerian deities. Another myth about love was similarly interpreted. Alright guys, next is Greek, Roman, Hindu, and I guess I'll stop at Hindu because that'll lead back to my thought. So Greek and Roman now. The Greek name for Milky Way is derived from the Greek word for milk, gala. One legend explains how the Milky Way was created by Heracles when he was a baby. His father Zeus was fond of his son, who was born of the mortal woman Alcmene. Oh, so Hercules is interdimensional child. He decided to let the infant Heracles suckle on his divine wife Hera's milk when she was asleep, an act which would endow the baby with godlike qualities. When Hera woke and realized that she was breastfeeding an unknown infant, she pushed him away and the sprouting milk became the Milky Way. No way. But you know, that's different. That's a weird, strange explanation, because where was the mortal woman? So that means there was another galaxy. So Greek. So that means Heracles wasn't born in this galaxy. That means Greek mythology is about. When Hera woke up, realized she was breastfeeding an unknown infant, she pushed him away and the spurting milk became the Milky Way. Another version of the myth is that Heracles, this is the Roman version, was abandoned in the woods by his mortal parents, Amphitryon, sounds like a transformer, and Alcmene. Okay, so in this, he was a child that had mortal parents. In the other narrative, he was a child of a god. Heracles. Wait, what is this? This makes no sense. Oh no, sorry. It's Heracles, Zeus, the interdimensional child. Nothing's changed. It says another version of the myth is that Heracles was abandoned in the woods by his mortal parents, Amphitryon and Alcmene. Heracles, son of Zeus and Alcmene, was naturally favored by his father, who sent Athena, Greek goddess of wisdom, to retrieve him. Athena, not being so motherly, decided to take him to Hera to suckle. Hera agreed to suckle Heracles. Okay, so in both, they have different beginnings, but at the end, ultimately, the child is pushed aside and the galaxy comes around. A story told by the Roman hygienist in the Poeticon Astronomicon, what a name for a book, like, says that the milk came from the goddess Ops, the wife of Saturn. Saturn swallowed his children to ensure his position as head of the pantheon and sky god, and so Ops convinced the plan to save her newborn son Jupiter, in Greek Zeus. Yeah. Zeus goes and pretty much tears open Kronos' head, if I remember correctly, and so Kronos is being seen as Saturn here. So, and then Athena pops out of the head. She wrapped a stone in infant's clothes and gave it to Saturn to swallow. Saturn asked her to nurse the child once more before he swallowed it, and milk that sprouted when she pressed her nipple against the rock eventually became the Milky Way. Okay. The color of the stars was white. And they were like, what is white? Clouds and milk. So that's why it all connects to milk, because the stars were white. All these cultures, all of their mythology is based on the color of it. How incredible. That means, imagine the viewers watching, like, look at this picture I've chosen. Imagine you looking at the blue snow on the tree, okay? And now imagine we had to kind of mythologize this. We would say it's like a blue. It's like I saw like this wooden pole with, like, I don't know, endless blue jelly beans. Do you know what I mean? It's like we connected to another thing of the same color, even though the ideas have nothing to do with one another. So color was an interlinking. Color was thinking for us. as a backup system before we started to discriminate between the contexts. So first it was a concept opening its eyes, then a concept opening its eyes to its context. Lastly, in the Hindu collection of stories called Bhagavatam Purana, written by Rishi Vyasa, it doesn't say that here, but I'm telling you, all the visible stars and planets moving through space are likened to a dolphin that swims through the water, and the heavens are called Sisumara Kakra, the dolphin disk. The Milky Way forms the abdomen of the dolphin and is called Akasaganga. Akasaganga, which means the Ganges River of the sky. So just check that out. Imagine right now we know that the Earth orbits around the sun, okay, and the sun orbits around an I don't know, there's some theories saying a giant black hole at the center of the universe. Other views are saying the universe is isotropic, it has no center. We literally can't give it location to even know it's a center or not. So our galaxy is the abdomen of the dolphin, this giant dolphin. So just like we're moving as a giant celestial movement, so it's like or how Buckminster Fuller and Marshall McLuhan speak about spaceship Earth. It's like this dolphin is very similar idea to like a spaceship. You know what he's saying, the dolphin swimming in the Ganges of the sky, the Ganges River of the sky. According to Hindu mythology, Vishnu lies meditating on Shesha with his consort Lakshmi in the Kshira Sagara, Sea of Milk. Yeah. So what it means is, it says lies meditating, but it's another way where anytime there's universal maintenance, universal activity being maintained, that's the work of intelligence. So what we call laws is the ability of higher dimensional minds, as a sort of way I can relate it, you know. I'm trying to kind of secularize a concept that it moves beyond material, a material framework, you know. So anyways, these were all explanations of different world myths of the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. Intent is important in life, because just like I see life like a video game, and I feel when we wake up in the morning, we log into our consciousness. And we don't know how we log into the consciousness, but we log into the consciousness and we find ourselves in a virtual map. For me, like sleep is like a character is being, imagine this world is like a video game simulation, and a character endlessly respawns. It lives a day, it starts with content, then the content goes back into the void, then it re-emerges from the void. So we log into the virtual space-time continuum, into an actual space-time continuum, visual. I shouldn't say virtual, visual, I mean, same thing, but visual space-time continuum. So, and check this out, just like a person who plays a video game, they see the character, they know that the character in the video game has no way of knowing who the person playing the video game is. Right? How scary would it be if the video game character knew you were playing it? Do you know, that's kind of like, I think the yogis that went into samadhi freaked out the gods, you know. They're, you know, it's like in Brahma Loka, they're like, okay, contact the, you know, the video game developer of the universe. This is weird. These yogis are realizing they are us, you know. That's like God problems, you know. But anyways, what I'm saying is we log into manifestation, and every person has certain abilities, and they require to train, and they require to engage the realm. That means a video game, imagine if somebody playing a video game character, but the video game character has stopped moving in the video game, and let's say it's a multiplayer online video game, and people in the multiplayer online are like, oh my god, what's up, why isn't this character moving? And the person's like, guys, I'm just tired of living in a virtual game, so I'm just gonna stand in this virtual map, you know, in this video game. I'm just gonna do nothing in this video game. Right? And it defeats the purpose of being in a video game. That means it's like eternity is playing a temporary game, and it's like people are trying to nullify their temporary nature to become eternal, rather than realizing it's a multidimensional piloting arena. That means in the outer realms, you move as an object. In the inner realms, you move as the attention that allows the subject to exist. So technically, behind your eyes, you're space. You're moving as space. Your intelligence is space. In front of your eyes, it is matter. So we log into this video game, and what's very cool is that the video game character has no soul. That means if nobody touches the mouse or the keyboard, the video game character doesn't move. And when I say your intent, what did I write here? The intent behind your effort suggests your soul size. How the character in the video game levels up is based on its effort in the game. And its effort, usually a person's effort arises when they observe something and make a conclusion on it. That means I couldn't give this talk until I had decided a destination for it at the end. It's like, why would the pilot get in the airplane if the pilot doesn't know where the airplane's going? You know, and this is what anarchist freedom doesn't realize. Life is not about breaking things and feeling free. Life is about building things and enduring collectively until better strategies enter the earth or open their eyes on this planet. So meditation is like samadhi or nirvana, moksha. These terms are kind of like the person being done playing the video game. When you're done playing the video game, you're done with your attention reincarnating endlessly in that same space. Now there are some beings, let's say, who they have manifested in the space-time continuum, playing, let's go along with this video game analogy, and some characters in the video game, they're like, no, the video game is a distraction, you know, I shouldn't be, as an eternal being, as an ultimate absolutist truth, be dabbling with temporary conditional simulations, realm simulations, let's say. So some beings, they're here to play the game. Some beings are here to change the game, and some beings are here because they're done. They're either about to exit the game, or they're done playing the game, or I don't know. Maybe they don't know what to do in the game. This is the worst. I don't want to say it's the worst, but it's also one of the strangest things, the person's like, wait a minute, so my eyes opened, I just awoke into a personality. I don't even remember my earliest memory. It's like that when it's like I went back into my memories and realized I was nothing. It's like in my past life I was nothing, guys. But in my future life, guess what, I would be everything, so they said go big or go home. They didn't realize that being applied to a character in a universe means being the universe. Guys, the chat section is so quiet. I think I've roared too loud. Yeah. The person wakes up in the middle of the night, and they're like, what was that I just heard? And they realize they heard a sound in their dream state. It's like they asked the New Age fellow, why do you want to astral travel, astral project? And the New Age fellow said, because I don't want to pay for EDM concerts anymore. Anyways, if it's seen as a video game, we can start from the character being more important than the map, the realm. We can have the realm being more important than the character. Then the character lives for the world rather than living for just the inner world. Everybody is living for a world. Everybody is serving. I don't want to say everybody has an agenda, but everybody is a pattern. And as a pattern, there is a sort of consequence. That means everybody is causing their behavior to have some sort of effect on themselves, So let's say that every human being, this is independence. When you start serving, let's call this the great independence. When you learn that it's important to serve your own inner realms, your inner world, you start caring for the world behind your eyes and how it's being piloted when you are like a candle here on this planet, and that due to the nature of the space-time continuum, we're melting. So do something with the light of the candle. Do something with whatever your intelligence and evolutionary update as a member of the human species is. Do something. So that's the independence. You're learning to serve the inner realms. Everybody serves the inner world, their inner world, because it takes a lot of effort to put aside how you see something, to see something in a way where you have to be like, I don't know what this means. A lot, how many people on this planet are comfortable saying I don't know, but I realize those who truly know what they don't know, they become liberated. That means at first people are fascinated with fragments of knowledge, but then you become fascinated with fragments in the unknown, and I would say ways that the mystery of the realm pulls you. In some cases it may push you. And guys, if there are people listening who what I'm saying is not coming across well, see me as a fool. And for those who what I'm saying that's coming across well, also see me as a fool, because in a world this unknown, really we're just sharing blueprints. I'm just sharing the blueprints of my eyes so far, what I've seen as a human being. Imagine in the future 8 billion human beings reporting to their species the patterns they find in their inner realms, and us developing a global archive where we are studying, where we are honoring Carl Jung. That means the moment I get enough resources to build the School of Athens, I'm going to put the giant statues of the greatest philosophers and psychologists and various just figures in history, you know, because this was my vision of city design. Even if I had the ability to design cities, the first thing I would do is the most important people, let's say a lot of like this is, I was like, look at what if only scientists had imagination. They would put giant statues of all the most important people on the planet all around the city. Can you imagine being a child born in this world and looking at a giant statue and pointing at your parents? Who is that? And your parents instantly explain to you who Einstein is. You know? And my ultimate philosophy, dear listeners, is that truth cannot be contained in language. I am using language as a at first I thought it was truth, then I realized it's paint. It's paint, it's subjective paint, overlaying something that is so objectively as it is, that really it's like our ideas have a value to our inner life, but how our body influences the outer realm has an idea, has a value to our outer life, right? Because we are a multidimensional we're experiencing multidimensional creaturehood. This creature, like, what is memory? Like, what are your memories, dear listeners? They're versions of yourself, and it's as if the brain is a camera and the record button was pressed and memories were made into files. You know what statue I would make, guys? I would make this giant statue starting with different important characters in history, all holding the other historic figures that have come after. You know? Can you imagine a giant statue, which till the end of time the statue is being built? Do you know? Where from outer space you would see it, and this statue is just made of just, you know, people in history. People don't realize how important the arts are to mediating how a species transitions from just a singular view on its dimension into a multiple one. That means art has been alive to keep our foot in the door of the unknown, regardless of what fixed truths or what sort of language simulations try to devour the person. Because I'm telling you, people can tell you what to do, but subjects, ideas can tell you what to do. That means I noticed something about my belief system, that when I was younger, I wasn't reasoning my intelligence. I was just accepting due to emotional contentment. That means it didn't matter. It was like the emotion of how the moment thrived, regardless of ideology, is more important to you as a child. But when you grow up, you realize, holy shit, there's so many arbitrary concepts functioning us. You know? Like, I would say 50% of human life is abstract. And that's a fair analysis. If I was to say, I would say 99.9% of the atom is empty. I would say this reality is just 1%. It's the tip of the iceberg. We are the tip of the iceberg of a universal activity, which we call universal, but it surpasses all the language that ants on a rock have came up with. The mystery is so much bigger than every human idea, that at some point you're like, does the species notice really where it is? I don't think so. I feel people don't want to know where they are, because if they truly did, they would have to muster up a responsibility for the gigantic emptiness which the meaning of life becomes to fill. That means the person's like, wait a minute, you know, why do I have a paintbrush in my hand, and why is there a canvas, and why is there paint on the paintbrush? You know, it's like, maybe the meaning of life is to paint it. Maybe the meaning of life is to go along the simulation, to figure out what the simulation is, then to have an awareness to get out of it, you know, but not to get out with a fanaticism of escapism. Because anything you escape, you link yourself to. People don't realize. Anything you fear, you connect yourself to. Because your intelligence is like, oh man, you should have just pulled the curtains and processed it, the truth of the fear, rather than have the fear remain as you go on in the future, and just that angle, right? That means if you're afraid of spiders, start researching and studying spiders. I'm telling you, try to understand their anatomy, their creaturehood, everything, right? Wow, what a great statement from Benjamin in the chat section. He says, look how we have monetarily dishonored our physics professors and experts teaching in colleges and universities. Let me tell you, we have not dishonored them. Analytical philosophy has encapsulated them into limited language use. So in science, there is, I would say, the biggest challenge of how do we bring all these accurate scientific findings to a society that emotionally and irrationally contains itself. We are not just like robots where, yeah, everything is mechanistically excellent, and then we go forth. It's like our randomity, our spontaneity, right? There's this thing where you see in movies, the person doesn't know what to do something, they go to like a friend or someone, who cares for them, and the person's like, oh, just have confidence, be yourself. And the person's like, what does that mean, be myself? And the person thinks being yourself is a verb. It's like it's something you have to do. But look at the being is the verb. That means it's like the less you do, the more you are yourself. When it comes to nature, when it comes to, let's say, psyche disposition. So I'm saying this is the challenge. We thought the analytical philosophers won, and the analytical society became, I will tell you, ever since Friedrich Nietzsche declared God is dead and man killed him. This German philosopher said this. This is one of the most important statements, epigenetical statements you can find. So, where was I going with this? Friedrich Nietzsche said, God is dead and man killed him. And man killed his own creation, his own personification attempt of the universe. That means man killed off his ability to connect his imaginary freedoms in the personal dimension to the impersonal dimension. That means that, that declaration of Friedrich Nietzsche's quote, God is dead, man killed him, he means mythology has become detached from the cultural program. It's the death of mythology's connection to culture. The animation of it. That means there is no more great legends. There is no longer champions on this earth. Only in video games there's champions. There isn't champions of the living earth, of the living universe. As if people haven't realized that their direct experience of life is their life. What truth can be hidden from energy that can't be created or destroyed? Changelessly observe the change, and the soul has already roared. Time is thin ice. The space-time continuum, I would give that narrative 250 years life cycle. After 250 years, we would be so convinced let me share this idea, guys. first of all, this is a philosophy podcast. And philosophy was one of the ultimate branches of knowledge where everything branched out from. Why? Because philosophy is the study of questions. Okay, and this world that we're living in, either you're in a state where you're wondering about things, or either you're in a state where you have answers. And so I'm telling you that to think that there can be an answer to a dynamic thing. It's as if the person took a cup, empty cup, and went to a river and put the cup in the river, took out that much water, and thought that water is the river. When I give these talks, the talk is the water in the cup, what I can contain to hold. And this means that we are multidimensional. If we are multidimensional, we shouldn't be afraid. Most people are afraid. Why? Because it means another view has to be added to how you're seeing everything you're seeing. Philosophy means we are done with just living as a body on this earth. It means now we're like, okay, let's say my body was in a chaotic state, in an ordered state, in whatever side, at whatever point in the spectrum. Now, why do I have a mind? Why do I know I have a body that is temporary, right? And that question ignites the mind's life. And your mind's life begins with questions that restore the real earth behind you, behind your eyes. That real earth means that you realize we don't know. So everything we do is still nothing compared to the giant unknown. Every truth hidden, unhidden is nothing compared to the gigantic unknown that whatever outcome our species has, we have to conclude, okay, what does this mean? We have sex all over the universe, all over as far as the edge of the universe can go. Do we overpopulate as a biological entity everywhere? And AI is just going in the future and building civilizations for us on all planets, and we're like the whole purpose of life becomes sex at that point? Is that what we're aiming for? Or is the mind's mystery way more fascinating, that there is not just per se a destiny of one dimension, but a destiny of multiple dimensions? So for me, it's like, okay, everything started strange, and it's the way we live that retaliates to that strangeness. There's this today I'm super happy. Let me tell you guys why. Because this show, Shingeki no Kyojin, the first episode of its final season came out. And it's like, but anyways, in this show, there was this character, pretty much this commander says to these soldiers that are scared, and he says it's like life is not meaningless, and using your consciousness, living well, is your greatest rebellion as consciousness, in the cruelty of a world that can't explain itself to you. The error of a modern civilization is in whether reality is imagined or whether imagination is real, which is another way of saying this model of subjects are unreal and objects are real are false. Let me tell you why. Because there is something called the Aristotelian causes. This is so important for anybody who's interested in philosophy. This explains, I have pretty much used the Aristotelian causes to explain the difference between an object and a subject in their causal value. There we go. Hang on, guys. I'm trying to find this diagram for you, so then I don't have to take longer to explain it. Probably everybody, like most people, know this, by the way. But for those who don't, because new human beings are entering the system, I think it's important. Okay. Okay, so here's the picture. If people look at the video of the there we go. So Aristotle, this giant, intellectual giant, for his time at least, he said, when you look at something, you can look at it, you can extract its causal meaning in 4 different ways. Okay, so that means whether, for example, he uses a table here. Okay, the table, you look at the formal cause. Why is this thing here? Because it has a shape, because it has a form. This is the design dimension. Usually a lot of my inner realms I geometrically manage. In the outer realms, you see, it's material. It's material is what that table is, right? Now, another reason of why that table is there, it's its final cause. That table was made by someone to be used, to be, in some sense, somebody to eat food on it. I feel when it comes to human life, the biology, there is a final cause, which I, in a very abstract way, say it's our timeless collective future, shaping how we move now. In time, or there is the efficient cause, where it was made in accordance to, like, there was a god, there was a carpenter. So you see, these are 4 ways where we look at the cause of something. Now I want to use this thing not on a table, the 4 Aristotelian causes, but on what the concept of an object means and what the concept of a subject means. So I'm in front of me, I have this cup of water. This is an object, okay? And then there's the subject, right? In my inner realms, I visualize like this cup of water hovering in the air. So I'm using this Aristotelian causal filter on the object and the subject. So the objects, it's same as the diagram. Like you could literally say the same thing, but for the subject, there's one that is different. It has form. You can know the form cause. That means you can close your eyes and visualize a cup of water, and that has form. You can know its form, its design. So the formal cause, check mark. Its final cause. We can see a final cause to things where we use our thoughts. For example, how we use it, an invention. You know, the thought can be used, in other words. The efficient cause, we create the thought. All these have been given check marks. The only thing that the inner realms don't have is the tangible material. That means our imagination is exactly like the world. It's just the material can't be touched. Your dreams can have as much of an influence on you as reality, just without the material dimension. So that's why I'm saying it's fair to say our imagination is an inner realm. Because we're literally, we can use the same, and of course this is in accordance to the Aristotelian filter, because any idea in a long enough time span can be countered into nothing. You know, can be destroyed. Any idea can be destroyed, believe it or not. Like, it's like, I'll tell you, I'm like my own greatest critic. Sometimes when I say something or when I engineer something, I know how to instantly also reverse engineer it, or I can see how it can break. So our subjective life is significant. There is some sort of subjective momentum for an object's destiny taking place. And one thing important to say is that the poet Rumi says, before death takes away all that is given, give away all there is to give. Which he means that because we're temporary, the value of our life is the value it has for the civilization. And some people may be like, this is too selfless. Maybe you got to be way more selfish in this life. Just, you know, seek your own freedom. But for me, it makes no sense. Our species constantly bringing children into a world that's becoming less naturally efficient as the days go by. Right? So it's as if the person's like, what am I doing here? And then the idea of the advanced civilization is found. Because when you live for yourself, that your emotions are dependent on what your self has. But when you live for your civilization, it's what your civilization has. Imagine someone feeling, in some sense, pushed away from society. Let's say that I want to bring the shamanic archetype into this, where the shaman lived at the edge of town. But imagine you are a cruel person in a kind society, and you are a kind person in a cruel society. Okay? Now, this kind person in the cruel society, or this cruel person in the kind society, is going to be like, what is this? This is not real life. You know, this kind of, let's say, Brave New World kind society is not real life. And so this is where, whichever side of the yin-yang symbol you find yourself on, it's ultimately you are first in a system where the functioning percentage is less than 50% efficient. Then you step out of that system, you observe the system, the way you see the system has to change, so you keep looking at something that looks the same until it's no longer the same. That's how innovation happens, by the way. I am saying that there are no pearls and there are no swine. There's just 8 billion creatures on a rock where they can either move as an object or communicate subjectively. And we have to advance both dimensions. The outer dimensions are being advanced, and in the outer realms there's going to be warriors, there's going to be human beings. This is way before my time. Excuse me, not way before, this is way after my time. my manifestation here. I see it way further than that. But what's going to happen is that there's going to be the human beings who they have simply entered this system to guard, to defend the outer realms, and there's going to be human beings that have been incarnated to, in some sense, defend the inner realms. That means we need great backup systems for our minds and bodies, you know. For the bodies, technological replacement. And I wanted to in the future give a TED talk on this, on like the journey of life, really. I will tell you, there is an anguish in the inner realms that it surpasses the outer realms. If that anguish can be retaliated and human beings snap out of the linguistic simulation, that means human brains are entering the moment, not endlessly generating linearity, but accepting non-linearity, because they realize, if you look at at least in the nature of our world, if you look at something meaningless in a long enough time span, you will find strands of meaning in it. Like, just that's the power of time. They say time heals things. Time also shapes things. It sculpts. Time is a great sculptor. Sculpting how our existence experiences itself. For me, everything that can be said is still the tip of the iceberg. If 8 billion human beings right now started communicating, and they realize, wait a minute, you know, I'm on this planet not to be in some sense like my ancestors, because what's the point of them living for the future? You know how lame would that be? You know, I think a lot of religious people, their ancestors are sad. Conceptually, if you had this at least native shamanic view where it's as if in the spirit realm, nobody dies. People just enter the spirit realm and they come into the real realm, the non-spirit realm. Native metaphysics had a pure intimacy with nature that was just its fluid passage. That means, imagine an advanced technological civilization, like a human being moving very instantly as if their knowing is instantaneous. Now imagine a shaman in nature running in a parkour way, you know, in a sense, being one with the rhythms of nature, as if man is not man, man is the spirit of nature. And when the spirit of nature forgets, that means, for me, this is the biggest, strangest thing where I am so fascinated, first of all, by native metaphysics, but it's just that if everything is the spirit of nature, then one must accept the spirit of nature. In all its forms. That means this is really advancement for a civilization, when we don't fear how we are being individuals, where we don't fear how others are being individuals, and we don't fear how our world is being individual. We don't fear how we are being collective. We don't fear how others are being collective, and we don't fear how the world is being collective. And if we can manage these 6 states of being, this would be the diamond age of human civilization. This would be that point in human civilization where we have for the first time established a conscious relationship with a future that depends on what we type in the void. That means the mind could be experiencing, think of your mind as a point, and think of your body as also the point. So mind and body are like the same point. Now imagine you have like suddenly endless lines just intersecting this point. This means now all these endless lines, now imagine these are endless, let me add the word time in front of line. So endless timelines intersecting one moment where an object and subject are instantaneously being. And in actuality, the subject is the subtle echoes. It's so sensitive that when you move anything, if you sat down and tried to be like a statue, okay, and you had this thought, I'm going to try to be like a statue, and you had this thought, then in a moment, if the thought goes away, for I'm not being a statue, you will notice the behavior of the body, even a single, your gravity pulling your hand down a little. Like even when I give these talks, there's been moments where I have been in midway talking and my hand has, like, I've been explaining something and my hands have involuntarily moved in the air, and the intensity my hand moved distracted me from my own talk. That's how sensitive it is. That's how sensitive the inner realms are. That a single thing changes, you know, it's like the inner realms constitution can imply something else. So I feel the fourth phase of evolution, which I didn't talk about, and I said I wouldn't talk about, but I guess I've said everything. How do we become so content as attributeless consciousness to be simultaneously the presence of our world? That means even though we are psychologically conditioned as individuals, does that mean that's how the brain is used? What if they say the human being uses 12% of his brain? I don't know how they came up with this number, but there was a journal, a psychological a psychology journal on this. There was an article where it was like, there was, what was it, like 12% of the brain is being used, and it's more in the frontal lobe region and the center of the brain. And it's as if, what do we do with all that, you know? And it's as if ever since we left the wilderness of our environment, all the parts of our brain that had been developed to manage us in a wilderness became dormant. So when there's wilderness, different parts of your brain activate. Right? In this show Shingeki no Kyojin, there's this character named Mikasa, this incredible woman who, she is like the strongest character in the show, the strongest willed, and she is strong. Why? Because she finds herself in moments where she doesn't have any purpose, but she has inner realm fearlessness. That means she is so fearlessness, she can be honest with the moment. Right? Because most people fear being honest, because they don't know how the world's going to react, not realizing the world doesn't even know, it can't see itself to even know what its opinion is. That means critics in a blind society are as blind as the society, are they not? If the society had limitations. So our limitations are, it's very multidimensional. Like, you can see that as well. What? In the show, this character, Mikasa, she finds herself in a scene where she's about to be eaten by this giant, and she's hopeless. She's lost like the love of her life, and she's just there, just paralyzed, you know, in this kind of numbness. And then it's so incredible because in this show, the way they've designed it is that there's a narration of her inner voice. So she's just shocked, staring at this giant about to eat her, and she's like this soldier in the show. This elite soldier. And what happens is right about when she's about to be taken by the giant, she just gets shocked and she's like, why is my body moving? She's lost her hope in her inner realms, but her outer realms miraculously are still moving her. That means even if you feel hopeless, your animal instincts come to save you, you know, to keep you human at least. Do you know that means it's like that moment the spiritual person who was about to dissolve into life, suddenly like a chaos found them and dragged them back into the outer realms. And they're like, why? Right? Not realizing that chaos was the blessing of the gods in disguise. Do you know? Because do you see, there's reasons. Because if we think we just have a value to ourselves, we're living only in our mind. If we feel the world has a value beyond yourself, we are living in the real world. So this character's body, Mikasa's body, just moves. Her body automatically moves, and she doesn't have the inner realm rationality reasoning. She's in anguish. In her inner realm, everything is null, but in her body moves. Then something miraculous happens. I don't know, through some sixth sense kind of synchronistic, Jungian synchronistic vibe. Suddenly, like the love of her life has become a giant in the show, and the giant comes and saves her. You know, so I mean, remember the story till it was good. You know, all the parts of the story. But anyways, that was the crucial thing. The body remained. That would be a sort of final cause argument. That means there is a reason to our life that we may never understand, but we will be. So that's the advantage of being at least an experiential being. That means if you have the experience of consciousness, don't fear. You have recognized as a being, at least in this space, in this space-time continuum, that you have watched one dimension. The moment you have an awareness, that your awareness, that's it. You're set. They call that nirvikalpa samadhi in some contexts, and it's surpassed it's way more complicated than how I'm saying it. But like, nirvikalpa samadhi was a state of awareness to the real self, of the real nature of the self of the universe, of the universal self, that when the human being noticed this, they would never, it doesn't matter where they incarnated, in what sort of simulation of the realm they incarnated, they would instantly have familiarity. They would have familiarity. That means they said literally, nirvikalpa samadhi doesn't matter what incarnation, you will always be enlightened in that incarnation. You will just naturally, as if you've paid for the ticket already. You know? So anyways, what I'm trying to get to is that the future is not going to be more unknown. So if people right now expect we're going to understand the future, it's like as Socrates says, the only true knowledge is to know that you know nothing, because the more you know, the bigger the forest becomes, the bigger the problems and unknown variables become. Again, the difference between what you don't know and what every living being in this universal sector doesn't know. You know, there's a difference. The collective unconscious is it is a sort of training for eternity. Right now, when I'm wondering, like, what am I doing right now? You know, and it's an intent. That means it's like, I've realized, like, okay, space is space. You can't do much about that. You know, matter changes. You can't do much about that. Free will, it's a way where you can synchronize moving matter in space, and you can't do much about that. But where does the free will come from? Or in other words, who is looking through your eyes, and is it a who, and can language contain it, or have we lied to ourselves because we couldn't develop a better strategy? That means how many human beings on this planet have the ability that if tomorrow they said everything you knew was a lie, how many human beings would be multidimensionally mature enough to be like, okay, let's see the next. Let's see the next great relationship of the individual human mind with the universal activity. It's like, what's next? I have had moments where I would say I am very... something about me, in these talks I cover it, but there's moments in my life where I'm very intense, you know, and this intensity sometimes has come from me in my inner realms shouting at the sky, which is poetic for me being taunted by certain universal questions. As if, how dare the light bulb in the room, like there's a light bulb in the room and the switch hasn't been clicked. So imagine on this planet, every exploration, every discovery, every attempt towards a new gaze through novelty, that is literally like clicking all the switches that haven't been clicked yet. right? And I realized there can be a geometrical revolution in the sense that we first of all give a complete next level makeover on the dictionary. You know, like they should make a TV show about it. Dictionary makeover, how language is a lie. Language isn't a lie, but it's hollow compared to living direct experience. So now we want to build a civilization that honors unknown direct experience as a universal right. That means you have the right, because that's the only way freedom would make sense. If chaos and order are both allowed, right? How can we say freedom is just order? How can we say freedom is just chaos? Now this issue is, like, there is a philosophy of freedom, then there is practically how do these philosophies, these contexts of freedom play out in the outer realms. I think the most important statement that could be heard in secular society is that the world is bigger than you think. And that is the end of inefficient self-creation. What I mean by this is that every human being, you have a choice. You don't know this because most people identify with language, but you have a choice over how subjects are positioned in your space, in your inner realms. And unless you discover the unconditional nature of how the unknown witness is just being, because it's so instantaneously being, we cannot compare it to anything. So technically truth, there's a timeless glitch. Let's call this the timeless glitch in the story of truth, in the story of time. Excuse me. And you know, the biggest challenge, see, like I saw this when I was listening to Terence McKenna. By the way, Terence McKenna is I listened to a lecture from him on society, and it changed my life, literally. But he couldn't see something, and he saw really far ahead. And he actually saw everything, but he didn't care for one thing he saw. And that is how culture needs a game. That means it's like steak and we are hungry for something. That means even if culture and ideology are wrong or are not your friends or are your friends, it's as if a game is required. This is why I'm like, it's only believe it or not, a great movement of designers that will liberate the world. That means the savior of the cultures of the world, the cultural programs, are designers. Designers are really our future, because the designer is the only human being who has the ability to just see design first and emotions not having anything to do with the geometry of how a moment happens. But when you bring emotions in, you personalize. When you personalize, you animate storyhood in time. When you animate storyhood in time, you contain in philosophical narrative. When you contain in philosophical narrative, you put a fog over the direct experience. But in a world where language has to be learned to be used properly, it's not about ideological satisfaction anymore. I ask myself, first, who am I alive for? And then the answer is myself. I'm alive to be this. And then I ask myself, What am I alive for? And that takes my attention way beyond the self, because what is here is beyond ourselves. You know, guys, how crazy would it be if in the future I go and buy this actual cottage that I found from a random, like I have the ability, you know, to do that, and then give a talk in the cottage about how I gave the talk now. That would be some, like, you know, we gotta create a new word for that. It's like, even Destiny's like, I don't know what to call that. Anyways, so let me just tackle the titles and end this off. So, how can the soul have size? In my personal school of thought, the soul can't have size. You know, and let me tell you why. Because the soul is defined beyond shape, and size is based on a measurable shape. So if the soul is beyond shape, you can't measure space. Like, you know, it's like, yo, I measured you know, cubic meter of space. You know, it's like, good for you. You know, it's like, now. But you measured nothing, you know, because there was no way of saying what defines the edge of the universe. We can say what defines our edge, our skin, you know, but we can't say what is the edge of the skin of the universe. You know what I mean? Like, the edge of the universe is a grand mystery which shouldn't be forgotten just because culture wanted you to buy cooler shoes. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the biggest thing. It's like, why is the philosopher in the ivory tower? Because the philosopher's like, I have enough shoes, you know. It's like a pair was enough, you know. You know, this is why I feel people are treating relationships in the modern era as shoes, even, you know. Instead of enjoying one pair of shoes where you invested a decision in and financially it's logical. I mean, why do you need that many shoes? You know, I mean, depends. If you're in a, you know, if you're in a fashion culture, probably you have to show off. But anyways, be content with what is, and you will not find the great secret, but you will be it. So that's my response to the soul size. That means some people thought their soul is small, you know, extra small. Some people thought, can you imagine we start a modern metaphysics based on clothing sizes? You know, it's like that person's, when it's like the cooler the person is, they're wearing, their soul is wearing an extra small mind. You know, you know, it's like the kinder the person becomes, okay, the person has a small mind. You know, their soul is wearing a small sized mind. You know, if the person is, you know, let's say medium, they wear medium. A medium-sized mind, you know, the soul wears a timeless soul wears a medium-sized, and then large, extra large, I don't know, whatever amount of X's you want, large to a point where Roman numerals are getting offended, you know. That means if Roman numerals could actually conquer, they would come and like conquer clothing companies, giving them a bad name, you know. So whatever size you can wear a different size mind. It's up to you. That's your style as a human being. You can, some people, like there were certain comedians who were known as geniuses in the comedy realm because the comedian acted like a clown, like a fool, like an actual fool in films, and yet in real life the comedian was very intelligent and the opposite of his behavior. Right? But why did he behave a foolish way? Because it was the best strategy. Right? That means on some level, it's like anything a person can judge and anything any human being does, they're like, that's all I could do in that moment, you know? But they, in the outer term, in the exoteric foolish, in the esoteric wise. Whatever I say every day, it's been like, what is this, like 6 years I've been doing this? Like, I've been entering this time machine for 6 years, wondering what is the role of the human subject in the universal activity. And so it is so easy to let it go. It is so easy to not care for something that has taken 4.5 billion years to evolve. Why? Because you can ignore its evolution. It's like a person does something nice for another person, and then the person's like, thanks, you know. You know, and the other person's like, it's like, you know, what the fuck, this person doesn't realize I cared, you know, like. The soul doesn't have size. We're beyond our thoughts. Thoughts is a reference point. We need more than one reference point to locate time. We can pinpoint the body in time. We can't pinpoint the mind in time. The mind is creating the concept of time. We needed time to we needed a mind to generate the concept of time. Now we're trying to, psychologists are trying to understand the mind in time. How adorable, you know. It's like you know, wake up yet. So the linguistic simulation is very important, that it's like the mind, it's like a film being played over it's like a film that has 4 dimensions. A film that has 3 dimensions is being played simultaneously and quicker over a film that has 4 dimensions. That means when let's say someone is riding a bike and then they imagine themselves riding a bike in the sky, right? So that's technically, it is true. In the outer realms, they're riding the bike in one location, but when they're riding the bike in the sky, at the same time they're visualizing that as they're riding the bike, it becomes like, it becomes 2 senses of self being witnessed. That means this is why we're not a self, the idea of a self, because we are aware of multiple. So civilization needs a new makeover that does not prioritize ethical morality in accordance to what stories have to say, you know, and how see, it's like, this is the attitude. That instead of the secular society being like, all right, traditionalists, you know, stop imposing, you know, it's like, get out of here, it's a new world, you know, get with the program. Instead, this should be the strategy. The liberal mentality should go to the conservative mentality and say, give us a giant chance. Because when a type of governmental activity just goes for a couple years and it changes, nothing big ever gets done because there's endless reformatting too quickly, right? So if it was a sort of longer period, that means, this may sound strange, but I feel it makes sense if governments, political systems were longer. And some people are going to be like, that's a chaotic idea, what if they're bad systems? But what if they're good systems? We would never know. So these 2 films need to be made aware of, and when you can notice these 2 films, they call that liberation, self-liberation, because your sense of self is based on how the subjective film and the objective film move. Right now, my subjective film is moving faster than my objective film. and I'm administering the whole moment as awareness. Like my mind is like the glow of a candle flame. So my brain is like the neural activity. My brain is like the candle flame flickering, and what I am aware of as the moment is like the glow of the candle. Now I'm a candle that is aware of the body of the candle, the wick of the candle, the brain, the flickering of the candle, the glow of the candle. But now I have realized beyond this, all these, the glow of the candle and what the candle is that defines the candle, there is the void. So this is where, this is like consciousness 2.0. Consciousness 1.0, oh my god, am I in a world? Consciousness 2.0, oh my god, is there something more than this world? Like, you know. So like, the beyond is not ignored so easily, just because atoms were shaped in a certain way in a certain decade. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful, and ultimately the roaring souls at the end of time is the advancement of us through beyond our individual bodies to realizing more and more that we are the world. That means we first fight in the world, then we stop fighting in the world, then we become the world. Then the world has an ability to become anything. So I am telling you, if you are treating yourself as a temporary being, infinite reasons to be afraid. If, for instance, you reverse the algorithm, and for a moment you were like, wait a minute, I've been conditioned in a world where I have been, and I'm not saying you are eternal, but I'm saying in regards to the philosophical context of what this could imply for our minds being a superior dimension than how our bodies are moving. We seek freedom, not realizing we have to create it. You have to create your life. And people are still looking for their life purposes, you know. It's like, what's my purpose in this life? It's like, what's the purpose of just staring at a notebook? You know, it's like live, yeah, and live with good handwriting, you know. Anyways, guys, namaste, thank you.